I remember a few years ago, somebody asked me, what do you do for fun? And I had such a hard time answering that question. I just went blank because at that time in my life, I was so focused on working, on being productive, and really just focused on everything I had to do that I felt like I had no space in my life for things I wanted to do. And I became so disconnected from what actually brought me joy that it became challenging to even answer a question like that. And maybe you can relate. Maybe you are so focused on taking care of the kids, on doing work, on taking care of the house, on doing all the things on your to-do list that maybe you've left yourself on the back burner. Maybe you have a hard time answering that question that I did a few years ago about what do you enjoy doing? And maybe you could think back maybe 10, 20 years ago, it might have been easy to answer those questions. Or maybe when you think back when you're a kid, it was easy to answer that. But what about now? And that's why I'm so grateful to have the guests that I have on today. They bring in such an amazing topic today, and they're talking about hobbies. And Erin and Tam are two busy moms who found themselves prioritizing everyone else before their own needs and wanted to change that. Through this realization, they created the Art of Hobbyness to make a space for exploring new interests and hobbies. They hope to inspire and help others do the same. And in this conversation, if you have ever wanted to create a new sense of a joy in your life or just start to discover maybe some hobbies again and reintegrate that, this is such an amazing conversation. They talk about how scary it can be sometimes to start something new and how we can really work through some of those things to start to cultivate more joy in our life and a connection with ourselves that maybe we've lost throughout all this work and busyness in our lives. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed my conversation with Erin and Tam. All right, welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. I am so honored to be joined by Erin Scimone and Tam Haydon. Thank you both for being here today.
Yeah, we are so happy, excited to be here. Yeah,
I can't wait to have this conversation. We're just saying we connected on Threads because one of your posts really resonated with me. And so I'm so honored to have you here and really dive into what we're going to talk about today. And what really drew me to you is that there are so many people that listen to my podcast who struggle with figuring out how they can take care of themselves and really start doing the things that bring them joy and all the things that, as children, we find easy to incorporate, but as adults and especially as working moms can be such a struggle. So before we get into all the things we're going to talk about today, can you just tell me the story of how did you create the Art of Hobbyness? How did that come about?
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you go first, Tam?
Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously brunches is what started all of this. We would go to brunch and just kind of talk to each other. From my side, my big thing is, the hustle culture is very, very real. And it was something that I kind of felt like downtime was wasted time, and therefore I wasn't being the strongest independent woman I could possibly be. And I had my two children and they're starting to get a little older, and I'm starting to see like a little bit more downtime. They don't need me as much as anymore. It's a little bit of time, but it's there, right? And I kind of was observing my husband to kind of see how he was filling that time. And it's with hobbies. He had like 6 or 7 hobbies that he just picks up at any given moment. And just seems to just navigate adulthood so much better than me. And so I kind of reflected on that and was like, maybe that's what I should do. I should find a hobby. So I kind of teamed up with Erin for my side of this, co-hosting journey in the Art of Hobbyness, and said, I think finding a hobby is my answer. Maybe prioritizing a hobby, because that's the same thing as saying self-care, right? The hobby is self-care. If I prioritize that, maybe that would help me prioritize myself.
Yeah. And I think so. My reason for getting into it is a little bit different than Tam's, but it was just we kind of met at we both were going through a lot of self-discovery at the same time. So my background is I am a high achieving woman for sure. I definitely have always felt that my whole life. Always been very academically driven. Went to become, I'm a dentist, and ended up starting my own dental practice, and then therefore became a business owner. which I had no idea what I was doing, just kind of thought that that was what I was supposed to do, was the next step. So I spent like a good 20, I'm almost 40, 20 years doing school and then the steno practice. And about a year ago, I just finally like pulled my head out of the sand and I was like, what am I doing? I've achieved so much and I'm very proud of that. However, have I had much fun along the way? And I think I kind of I definitely lost who I am as a person along the way, which probably will resonate with a lot of your listeners. So definitely about a year ago, I hit burnout, like 100%. I didn't know what that was at the time, but I was experiencing a lot of emotions and just extreme stress, anxiety, probably some depression. And so because of that, I had to do a lot of self-work and, started doing therapy and started just really analyzing what am I doing with my life? So bigger picture. However, TM is my best friend and we have lots of conversations about our personal lives and how we're feeling. And we both just kept coming back to like, we need to find something more for ourselves, prioritize ourselves, like really get out of this just cycle of only focusing on like work and career path and serving other people. We really wanted to just really start focusing on serving ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we brainstormed for a long time and we finally were like, I also, without saying it, was looking for a hobby as well. And so I really liked this idea. And over many sessions, we finally came up with the Art of Hobbyness and decided to jump in. And in itself, it has become our hobby,
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. And so it's incredible how, for me personally, it has been a huge piece in just pulling me out of that burnout.
Yes.
And I didn't realize like how bad I was feeling until I started to feel joy again. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. And there's so many things both of you said that just resonate me. I know will resonate with people listening, is that sense of like you lost yourself. Like you did the next logical step. You're doing all the things you think you should do that's expected of you outside of yourself. And then you like wake up one day, you're like, oh my gosh, where am I? Like I'm playing a role, but where am I? And it's like, that's so resonant to me. And I love that you started a podcast and that became your hobby. That's so cool. It's so cool. I love podcasting. So I love that as a hobby. It's amazing. And what I want to go into that more because I find that it's like so many people and you feel that sense of like loss, like who am I? What do I enjoy? And especially maybe like 20 years have gone by before you've even asked yourself that question. Like, how do you start to find what that is? Because it can be so intimidating to just go into the sea of all the things and you are a beginner in everything. Like, how do you start to kind of pick and choose that? What was it that you went through?
Yeah, I think that I know TM has talked a lot about like you would look up lists of hobbies. Like
I would try to Google hobbies, but I would get the same like 3 things: sewing, crocheting, and reading, which all are great hobbies in themselves. They just weren't hobbies that resonated with me. So for me, it was a lot of again, like Erin is my best friend, so like using her as a soundboard of like just kind of brainstorming like how can I take that step into self-care. And I think the thing that we really realize is that we actually need to make that a priority.
Yeah.
Like it's okay to say, I think you actually talked about this on one of your recent episodes about how you have this idea of self-care, you know that it exists, you want it out there, but there's like this elusivity of, it's not even a word, elusivity, to make a word. This elusivity of it where it's like, but how do I even start, how do I even get there? And I'll tell you, I didn't know the answer to that in the beginning, and I think the podcast kind of helped us give us a starting point because it gave us accountability.
Yeah.
I think
that was the word I was going to use. Like accountability has been, if I were going to give a piece of advice to somebody, is like finding some way to have accountability, at least to get started. I know that I found that just knowing that like we're counting on each other to try something new has been huge, and we're each other's cheerleaders.
Absolutely.
And we also have very supportive partners, which has helped as well. So I think it takes support in whatever way you can find it. And I think too, for me, it was just getting over this idea that the people pleasing, like that my needs don't matter. And so and it was slow. Like it started with, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to put myself out there. And it was really scary, but having somebody else helping me stay accountable, it helped push me past that barrier. And I will say that like each time it gets a little easier to put yourself out there, you know?
Great way to put that. Yeah. I agree, because I honestly, I don't think I would be where I am at this point in time had I not had you there with me along the way, and like knowing that like undeniably you supported me. I don't know if you even knew me yet, but you did. And like having, like you said, it was difficult at first, a lot of vulnerability hangovers, I think. But I think as we work through this together, it is getting easier each time we sit down and do this.
And I think it comes back to like the rewiring, like which is the theme of your podcast, right? It's just it takes time, but once you commit to it, and it's just those little, like I'm sure you probably read like Atomic Habits, those little changes that you make end up leading to big changes eventually, you know? And I am a different person I was a year ago, and I didn't see that coming, you know. It took a lot of work and just like small changes every day, even just one little thing, working on myself. And you don't think that that's going to happen, but then you wake up one day and you realize it has helped immensely. Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that. And it's like, I mean, that's so true, that compounding effort of like the consistency, showing up for yourself. And I love that you say that you're a different person today than you were a year ago. Like that's truly the power of it, that applying these things, like you become a new person. I love that. Well, I want to go back to like Pam, when you started, because I know like as a mom, you can experience the mom guilt, you know, when you have a spouse, you know, thankfully you have supportive spouses, but sometimes spouses aren't supportive of it. Can you say how, like, maybe did you ever feel a sense of guilt when you started putting yourself first and prioritizing yourself? And how did you work through some of that guilt to release yourself to do the things that you're doing?
I mean, do you have to speak to that? I mean, I can speak to it too.
Can we just take the hour just to talk about that alone?
I mean, we really could. I know it's a loaded question.
Because mom guilt is just so real. And like, I honestly, I think there's always going to be this low hum of it. So long as especially while your babies are small and need you, right? There's always going to be this low hum of, man, am I doing my part? Am I doing enough? And, you know, I think what I think you would probably agree, what we've been most fortunate about is our spouses are very supportive of us. And I think having those conversations of not saying, hey, I need, like just being more like, here's what I am expecting out of my day. Here's the times where I'm expecting to have that self-prioritizing time.
Scheduling it.
Yeah. You know, and like, thank you for the word. I'm just like, let me just spell it out. But I feel like just keeping open conversations going. And I think having a level of respect with your partner, I think if you can both have that and keep that going, I think that gets it in there. But you know, I sit here and say all that, and I've got a friend that's going out of town this weekend, and she's got twins, and she's talking about this like mom guilt that she's having, and she's like, any advice? And I was like, nope, stay busy.
Yeah. I mean, it is one of those things that you also get comfortable with eventually too. And you just have to I think a lot of it is getting over that people pleasing of like just saying no and then being okay with that and realizing that the world doesn't end because you weren't there for an hour, you know, and
figured it out just like I figured it out.
Yeah. So it's like a muscle you have to flex. Right. And, so for me, I think my husband is supportive as well, but I think too, I've had to reset my brain, like when he needs his self-care time. And so I have tried to check myself and not be resentful of that, give him that, you know, as well, and know that he will reciprocate.
Absolutely.
So yes, definitely a lot of open communication, more than ever, like with our spouses, in regards to that. So yeah.
What about you? Did you like experience mom guilt, and like how did you kind of like, any pro tips that you can even suggest for us?
Yeah. So I mean, my kids are young. So I have a 2 and a 5-year-old. So like, but the 5-year-old is very aware. But for me, it was like he started being like right now he's downstairs. He's like, he knows I'm doing a podcast, so he'll ask about the podcast. And like for me, what really released me is like, if I am telling him to go live his dream and do what brings him joy, like I better be doing it, because I'm going to lead by example. Like I can't tell him to do something that I'm not even doing myself. So like I carry that, and like, so, you know, he gets involved, like he'll ask about it and like ask about, oh, what did you talk about and stuff like that. So he gets involved, and I think that just makes it easier for me to feel like, okay, like, you know, I'm leading by example. Like if he ever wants to put himself out there, like when I started this 2 years ago, I was really putting myself out there as uncomfortable. Like that's like something that I can share that story with him when he is in that place of putting himself out there. So I think it's like when we as parents like are expanding and growing, like we are giving our kids the biggest gift of seeing that through their own eyes.
That's so true. Yeah. And we've talked too a lot about like our kids seeing us doing just new hobbies. You know, my current hobby is playing the piano. And so I brought home a keyboard and they're seeing me practice and they're willing to come get involved. And so it is just leading by example and giving them permission to be creative and do things for leisure and not feel like it's just the work culture all the time. Yeah.
Adding that vocabulary in their Rolodex, I think also just puts that, because I don't think the word hobby was a term used in my household as a kid. It wasn't a term, like, I really didn't meet the word hobby until I met my husband. And now that like I have that terminology, I try to say it around my daughters a lot, and I can see them like making, or I can hear them making comments like, oh, this is my new hobby. It's like, yes, it's resonating, it's sticking.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so important to start bringing this into like where we are. Cause I know you said you're both like nearing 40. Like I'm right around the same age. I think like I agree. Growing up, it wasn't that thing that was prioritized. It was like work hard, you know, go get your degree, do this, then you'll be happy. And it's like, you know, you do all those things and you're like, wait, I'm supposed to be happy.
I'm not.
I'm supposed to be happy. Like, yeah. So it's like, I don't know if you felt this. I felt bamboozled when I got my degrees and I'm like, okay, well,
definitely.
I could have spent that time doing something that was actually making me happy. So
maybe something creative that like totally took you on a different trajectory or journey and just you're absolutely
Yep, absolutely. I want to talk about too, because when you're starting a hobby, like I mean, I experienced this when I started podcasting. I'm sure you did too when you're starting out. It's like you know you're a beginner. Like everything feels like it's like you're riding a bike, everything's awkward. You have to be so focused on every little thing. And like can you talk about like your journey? Because I know I experienced this, but like can you talk about your journey of like it's okay to be a beginner at things and how you evolved with that?
Yes. I think for us, well, a couple of things come to mind. So with the podcast, for sure, that resonates. You know, definitely, we still have imposter syndrome and feeling like, we're not really podcasters yet, you know. And but we have having to give ourselves a lot of grace. Like those first few episodes, you know, just listening back to them. It's hard to do that, but gosh, it sure made us stronger, right? I think with actual like leisure hobbies other than our podcast, for me, what I've been really focused on is like it's okay to quit, because like my whole life I've never been okay with quitting, and that's actually like been the bigger lesson for me is like if I try something, then I don't have to be perfect, and I can quit if I don't like it, or I can just dabble in it and come back to it later. Like that aspect of it has just completely changed my way of looking at things. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
like that's a part of like that beginning syndrome, because like so you know our style of our podcast is, you know, Erin tries a hobby, I try a hobby, and then we also introduce or interview people who are interesting with interesting hobbies, right? And so because we're each trying hobbies, we're kind of getting like a fresh start over and over again with a different hobby. And I think after you practice it a couple of times, you start to be okay with like what you're saying with failure, one, two, being recognizing when you're not into something. That was one thing I noticed that like my husband did really, really well is when he found something of interest, he would like really dive right into it, like buy the awesome things that go along with it and buy the things that make it easier and more enjoyable of an experience to try, to really fully feel like if it was something he was into. Whereas I didn't do that, like, because again, hobby wasn't really a word I was into it, but I was like trying to explore it. So I would find the cheapest, least effective way to get into it, not on purpose. It was just because I just didn't really know how to embrace it. And so therefore I made it harder on myself and then didn't enjoy it. Right. But like us doing this podcast of like kind of taking accountability of like trying to make a hobby work, or at least giving it at least a decent effort, we're buying the right tools, we're trying to get the right mindset, because that's another big one, is the mindset. And I think that kind of is helping us get into that barrier of understanding that a hobby comes with the right tools, right mindset, and then knowing that it is absolutely okay to say, this is not me.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this anymore at all.
And too, I think like I always thought when you're like, if you have a hobby, like you just have to become an expert at it, because that's just how my brain is. Like, and I'm sure we all feel that, you know, in your listeners. And I'm starting to like, we've been interviewing a lot of people, and there's so many people out there that they just literally just dabble in hobbies, and they'll pick up something for a little while and then they quit, or they decide to do some DIY for a little while and then they don't ever come back to it. And it's just knowing that other people, that's how they hobby, has been like, oh, maybe I don't have to like
be an expert,
be so black.
Well,
yeah, be so black and white about things, you know?
I think that's perfectionism.
Definitely.
Though, it's like,
definitely.
I think if you pick up the hobby, you're like, I have to be the best at it. It's a challenge. I've got to be so good at it. And I think that's the barrier that we're trying to break down. It's like, we don't have to be this perfectionist. Like we can fail and do it gracefully. And learn from it and take a piece of it and move on to the next hobby.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I think that's such a great point, because it's like when you think you have to be perfect at it, be the best at it, it becomes less fun. And then you're kind of defeating the whole purpose of having a hobby. Like you're supposed to feel joyful and lighter and fun and like free. And if you feel like you have to be perfect, it can feel so stifling in that. So I think it's such a great point. And hopefully anyone who's like thinking of picking up a hobby listens to that and is like, oh, I don't have to be perfect, and let that replay in your head. Like this is just meant to be fun right now.
So, and that is such a hard thing to switch in your brain. Like when you're used to just always trying to be perfect.
Would you say it's requiring your brain?
I mean, definitely.
Yes. That's it. But you know what? It starts with planting the seed right now.
It does.
So it really does. For the first time.
Yes, it really does. Yeah.
That's it. You know, you have a different connection now than maybe you had 5 minutes ago. So you're starting the process. So I love that.
That's right.
I want to talk about, because I know I watched a few of your posts too, you know, a little earlier, and I know you talk about community, like how important is community, and like how does your community change when you start to pick up different hobbies?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I think we have, well, you can speak to this too, but I feel like we have discovered that that is a very high priority in our hobbying life and the podcast and everything. I think originally, like when I think of hobbies, I think of a solo activity, more like, I don't know, just at home doing your own thing. However, we have found the most joy out of sharing the hobby experience with other people. And it's kind of cool. Like Tam talks about how now we have things to talk about with other kids on the playground.
Yeah, like I know how to make friends now. Talk about a hobby. I didn't know how to make friends as an adult.
So true.
So it's something about like, you know, okay, so now I'm starting to play the piano. I might meet somebody else who also dabbles in the piano, and now I have just a tiny bit of knowledge to share with that person and connect with that person. And so it just feeds that excitement about the hobby.
Yeah, so. I agree, because like I previously, I think I would describe myself as an introvert. Like I just wanted to be like in my own home, do my own thing. And like, I thought that those would be the hobbies I wanted, which is probably why when I would Google hobbies, that's what it was spitting at me, right? I'm sure I was.
The algorithm. Is that?
I'm sure I was pushing Google to give me those hobbies. So they're like, look, what you said you like. But it's not what I like. And a couple of the hobbies that I've tried getting into more of like group settings, and found myself like grossly more excited and more into those hobbies than I was into the more like personal ones, which I don't know that I would have ever figured out about myself had I not just prioritized that time of myself and pushed myself out the door to go be with other people besides my husband and my kids. And seeing that, it's making me even kind of, I even kind of mentioned this to Erin, I feel like I'm like on this verge of an evolution based off of what I've been learning and trying new hobbies. And I will tell you, I have failed most of the hobbies I've tried. But yet I don't think of them as failures. I think of them as like, it was just a chapter, right? I just did a chapter of this. I did a chapter of calligraphy, which is very difficult in case you're curious. And I feel like I just keep getting closer to something. I don't know what I'm getting closer to,
Mhm.
but I feel like I'm getting closer to a Tam that I am getting excited to be. And I don't know where that is, but I'm really excited
I
that
love that.
Erin's
Yeah.
with me on it.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you can be a part of me with it, because it's just like, I don't know. I'm getting excited. I'm getting excited for who I'm about to become. And I want everybody else to do it too.
Yeah.
So your audience is now our new community. Community is everything. Just go out
That's
there and
it.
try some hobbies, because I'm
Yeah.
telling you, like, you're gonna start evolving into a person that you didn't even know you could be, because you just didn't
Mhm.
try it. You just
Yeah.
didn't know that there was something out there that maybe you liked about
Mhm.
something, and you're like, oh, but then you could
Mhm.
pivot into something somewhat similar, a little different. Oh, there's something cool.
Yep.
Keep going. I
That's
mean,
right. Yep.
I could ramble on.
Mhm.
Don't let me keep going.
I love that. I love that, like, that self-discovery. I think that's such a huge part of just like our life. Like, I think we're all just here to learn more about ourselves. And
Yeah.
I love that the action of, discovering different hobbies is uncovering that in you, and that you shared that, because I think it's so easy for us to like sit and just think and allow our thoughts to like just stay in the same place. But without any action, we're never gonna ever become anything different. We're
Agree.
just going to stay in the same thoughts. So I love that. And it's so inspiring. I hope that somebody hears this is like, okay, well, I'll just do it. I'll just jump into something. Like, just
Yeah.
do it. Cause it's like, it is like uncovering, we
Yeah.
often have all these layers that
Yeah.
stifle us from our true essence. And it's like, maybe each one of those things was pulling off one of those layers. So you really are discovering who you are at the
Definitely.
core.
And I think we all, at least I've experienced this, that if you can listen to your intuition, it's there. Like there's things like you're like, oh, I want to try that, but then you just kind of like ignore it, and move on. And if you can just tap into that a little bit and just take the action, like don't even think about it, just do it, right? Like just start something and it could change everything. I don't know. We're very passionate about hobbies,
Very
clearly.
passionate about hobbies recently. I don't know if you know this, Kelly.
What I just like, as you were speaking, like I'm so curious, like how much of what you're doing now do you see in your younger self, like the child version of you? Like, do you see that in yourself now with the hobbies that you've selected and the
Cool.
things that you're uncovering?
So I recently have my current hobby right now is I'm trying to learn how to skateboard. And
Nice.
the number of times I've yelled "wee," and I'm gonna tell you, I've not gone down a single hill. I have, I have yet to do any tricks. It is literally just me on a straight line, just cruising down my neighborhood street. But I think I'm gonna say no also at the same time,
Hmm.
because I
Yeah.
think as girls, I think we're, especially our generation, millennial
Mhm.
women, I think we were pushed so hard to be so educated and so academic and so successful and so independent. We had to be so of everything. I
Mhm.
don't think we were ever given the opportunity to explore um, just who we really were,
Hmm.
right? Because I'm sure many people can agree with this. Your parents probably told you you should probably be this when you grow up, and so you're just
Hmm.
like, okay, yeah, I guess that's what I'm going to be when
Mhm.
I grow up,
Hmm.
and you just pursued that, and they, kept the cycle going of you should be that, yeah, that's what I'm going
Hmm.
to be.
Mhm.
But then we got there, and we're like, but was that really what I wanted? And am I really happy? But
Mhm.
I don't think I got to be a real young Tamara who got to really explore creativity like I
Mhm.
maybe should have or wanted to.
Yeah.
And so, like, I feel like at this point in time in my life, I think that's the evolving that I'm feeling. I think that's part of it is like I'm discovering a person that maybe was always there,
Hmm.
but just was maybe like pushed down due to expectations.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would say maybe more what I should say is I'm finding a kid-like self of Tamara. Like
Yeah.
me saying
Hmm.
Yeah.
we in
Yeah.
skateboarding. I don't know if that was kid Tamara,
Hmm.
but I'm finding kid Tamara
Yeah. That makes
now.
sense.
Does that make
Yeah, it
sense?
does make sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think for me, like I think there are I to answer your question specifically, I don't think I have tapped into my childhood likes and I think there were things that I still want to break into that I liked as a child that I'm almost like scared to go there. And like that's
Oh,
probably
wait.
yeah.
Why are you
I
scared?
don't know because they're like really out there, not way out there, but way outside my comfort
Oh
zone,
my God, tell me, what is it?
Well, like the acting classes. Like I really, when I was a kid, I was really into like that kind of stuff, but that was when I was really little.
Sure.
And so that's one. But that's just so out far of my comfort zone. But I feel like I'm working my way there, you know, like with these smaller hobbies and getting comfortable trying new things. Like, so I have that kind of in the back of my mind that I do want to revisit some of those things I liked as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
awesome. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And then just, I wanted like for somebody who's listening is like, okay, I love this, but like, how do I even start? Like if they're like literally in the beginning stages, they
Yeah.
have been, you know, going, working all the time. Like they are just burning the candle at both ends. Like, where would you say for them to start to like dabble in some of this?
Oh yeah.
So I think,
Yeah. So we typically tell people we actually call these like a hidden hobby, right? Like
Yeah.
we really truly believe that everybody has like a hidden a hobby hidden down in there, something of interest, right? So what we try to tell people is just like for a week, just look at your life and maybe even journal it. Just like anything that brings you joy, just make a note of what that thing was. Take a little post-it. I really enjoyed walking my dog. I really enjoyed going to brunch with my friend. And then after like a week, just look at that list that you made and look to see like if anything just jumps out at you on the page. And then I think you should actually like go after and pursue that particular interest and see if there's something that can kind of stem out, like come out of that. Like if there's some sort of hobby that just like appear like it's almost like it presents itself to you.
Yeah.
And it gives you like a starting point.
Yeah. I
I
think,
love that.
yeah, I think you can start to notice some themes of things you like
Oh
to
yeah.
do.
Mhm.
And so it's not about, we had a friend tell us, it's not about like adding more to your schedule. It's
Yes.
about prioritizing your self-care or these hobbies over something else that it really isn't as important
To bring you
know,
joy.
to bring you
To
joy.
bring you overall joy.
And so it's, I guess, yeah, it's really just not making a huge barrier to entry to start with. Like really trying to just start small because otherwise it becomes overwhelming. That's just our personality types, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I love such great tangible suggestions. I think that's great for somebody to be like, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
Like, and then it's like that becomes that breadcrumb of like, okay, open that little door. I'll open a little bit bigger door
That's
next
right.
time. Like,
Yep.
and then, yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that. And it's just like, I had somebody on, I think I just posted the episode, but they were talking about the power of creativity. And it's like when you start to implement creativity in your life, like you feel more alive. Like we are creative beings, but yet much of what we do in life is just on autopilot. We're just going through the motions. So that's why I love this. It's like, let's start bringing in that creativity and like making it part of us again.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I love
Our
that.
hobbies, Kelly.
Yeah.
What are you
What's that?
We
My
asked-
hobbies? Yeah. So I mean, podcasting, I've done this for 2.5 years. Like, love it. This is probably one of my biggest ones, but I actually started painting. Like it's so funny. Like I just would watch like YouTube videos and like I'll just paint and like never really considered myself to be a painter, but like there's something so therapeutic about it.
Oh,
Like so now I have all these like paintings that I've done. My husband and I'll do it together. So yeah, I love it. I love making soap. Like just something I love. Yeah, I enjoy doing that. So
recently
yeah.
suggested that to me. I might be coming to you for some advice on how to break into that.
Yeah, I love it. And it's so usable. Like I was
yeah.
like, I want things sitting around. Like I can use the soap. So
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, so those are probably like the big ones that I do like pretty regularly. But yeah, I mean, I think I need to explore more, get into more things. I do write poetry too. That was something like I did as a child, and like I've been starting to bring that back into it because I feel like I missed that. But yeah,
Cool.
that's where I'm at. But if you
Oh.
ask me, like I remember like when I was in, you know, I went to PT school. I'm a physical therapist, but by trade, but like I remember coming out and someone's like, "Oh, what do you do for fun?" And I'm like, I
That's how you do.
I couldn't answer them.
No.
Yes.
I'm like, I read textbooks and then I like, I
Yes.
don't even know.
That was me for so long.
Yeah. So like who I am today is like, I can answer much better than I could have a while ago. So yeah, I mean, it took a little while for me to get back into that, like, oh, it's okay to like do things for fun again.
Yeah.
Like you don't always
Definitely.
have to produce like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We talk about that
Yeah.
a lot. Like it shouldn't be a production, doesn't need to be a production based hobby.
It really doesn't.
And
Yeah.
one other point I was thinking of is we talked too about how it doesn't matter what you like you shouldn't be embarrassed about it. You like what you like and just embrace that. You know,
Mhm.
I don't
That
know, we
weird.
started to explore that us going to brunch as friends can be a hobby, right? It doesn't have to be a creative thing necessarily. I think there's people that love to go do shopping, that can be a hobby if that's what you like. I just think that just embracing all aspects of your personality and just share that with the world.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I love that maybe is a great starting point for somebody too, that is like, okay, maybe picking up a guitar feels so overwhelming. I'll start with the brunch and then see what goes from there.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I love that you share that, because that might just be a really great starting place.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Always
Try a new restaurant. I don't know if you
That's
like
it.
food, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Coffees, like go make some coffees or something. Yes. I love it. This has been such a great conversation. And for someone who wanted to connect with you, find your podcast, where can they get there? Excuse me, where can they find you?
Yeah, we are, you can check out, our podcast is called The Art of Hobbyness, and we are on all major platforms, podcast platforms. And then you can also follow us on Instagram. So
yeah, that's where we're short and easy and sweet.
Yeah.
I love it. I will put everything in the show notes. So definitely, for anyone listening right now, check out the podcast. And, if you're thinking of picking up a hobby, like connect with them. Like this is awesome. Like I love this. And I think there's just so much power behind this of like exploration, learning more about yourself, and just really tapping into a place that maybe has been dormant for a while. So thank you both so much for being here today.
It was great to chat with you.
Yes, I loved it. So again, thank you everyone who's joined us today, and definitely connect with us and share this episode with somebody who maybe could really benefit from it. So thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Rewiring Health. I hope you found our conversation both enlightening and empowering. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to Rewiring Health so that you never miss an update. Also, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you could take a moment to rate and review the show, it would mean the world to me and help others discover the power that we all have within us to create change and create the life that we truly, truly desire. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with me and sharing the energy of the show.